Today on Investigate TV Plus, a critical project to remove every lead pipe in America in order to protect millions from contaminated water. I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. The proposed deadline, 10 years, but there is skepticism the goal can be reached and evidence the plan is already off track.
Lead pipes are bad. Get it out and stop giving it to the people that you're supposed to be protecting.
Plus, a school shooting transforms two mothers into activists.
I will not be able to live with myself if I don't use my voice.
How they're turning anguish into action and advocating for gun reform.
And a musical duo hits all the right notes, turning a difficult journey into powerful punk rock therapy.
It was just one of those odd connections in life that I would have never expected.
In-depth stories that inform and inspire. You're watching Investigate TV Plus. A massive undertaking to replace the pipes that pump water laced with lead into homes across the country. It's one of the top priorities of President Biden's agenda.
But those who question if the 10-year timeline can be met point to inaction in the city that sparked a national outcry for change.
3, 2, 1.
In 2014, a decision by Michigan state leaders transferred Flint's water source from the Detroit River to the Flint River in order to save money. But the water was not properly treated after the switch, leaching lead from the city's old pipes into the drinking water. While some cities have already successfully removed lead pipes, Flint residents still grapple with the issue a decade later.
Investigative reporter Carice Jackman digs into the government's plan to get the lead out.
"10 years ago, Flint, Michigan became the national epicenter of water contamination in America.
The water is running out the faucets yellow and brown.
Human rights violation to the extreme.
But that town isn't alone. In millions of homes, drinking water is pulled into faucets, showers, and bathtubs laced with lead.
Lead isn't this harmless thing. It is a very potent neurotoxin. It does permanent damage. We can pass it down through generations.
A victim of greed, corruption, and the mistakes and the blatant stupidity of our government. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Melissa Mays knows all too well what happens when clean water isn't taken seriously.
Is the crisis over? No. We had to sue to get the service lines replaced, and that's not even finished.
That lawsuit filed by Mays and others claimed the city of Flint violated the Safe Drinking Water Act. The city settled and agreed to replace all the lead lines by 2020, but that didn't happen.
Mayor Neely, why did it take so long to fix these lead service lines or replace these lead service lines?
Right. You know, you have to be very methodical about the way that you approach it. You know, we had to deal with the eroded trust with government and residents alike.
This year, a federal court found the city in contempt because it failed to replace all the lines in time and didn't finish related repairs to sidewalks and yards. Flint's Mayor Sheldon Neely said he couldn't delve into the court's order and litigation, but says at this point, the city's replaced nearly 30,000 lead service lines and only has 30 to go. But that is now 4 years after the court-ordered deadline.
So for those who may say, it took too long, there's no excuse, what would you say to people who said that?
Well, I mean, many communities throughout the country are going through the same thing, and they're saying that it takes time. It takes time to be very thorough and methodical about what we do.
Flint, under a federal court order, couldn't get the pipes in one city replaced by its deadline, making the job of replacing millions of lines in America in the next 10 years a daunting task.
One that 15 Republican attorneys general have this year even called unworkable, underfunded, and unnecessary. That in a letter to the EPA that says the proposed deadline is impossible to comply with.
We are prioritizing this issue.
Wendy Wilkes, Director of Infrastructure Implementation at the EPA, says they are working hard to bring the administration's Get the Lead Out initiative to life.
We've set up really our largest ever technical assistance initiative, and GLOW, the Get the Lead Out initiative, is a part of that. With GLOW, communities will receive technical assistance kind of along a range of different ways to get the lead out of their water system. So it starts with identifying where the lead service lines are.
But that identification isn't simple. We've discovered some states don't know the full picture of how many lead lines they have, which means the full scope of the problem remains largely unrealized. We asked every state for an estimate of how many homes have lead pipes. The result? Some had identified tens of thousands of lead lines, like Massachusetts, Tennessee, and North Dakota. But many couldn't give us a number. Alabama said their number is unknown. Kansas also said it had nothing on hand to give us. Nebraska, the same. But later this year, all of the states will have to know their numbers. An EPA rule requires states to get an accurate inventory by October 16th. Counting lines is not a quick process, and the clock is ticking. One survey found it takes 2 or 3 full-time people working 6 days a week, a total of 2 months, to do an inventory of a medium-sized city.
So can we realistically get this done in 10 years?
I think it's possible. We have really good examples across the country of communities who are well on their way to reaching that 10-year mark, some perhaps even faster.
For Mays, she's tired of the excuses and doesn't want to hear states say it can't be done.
Get the lead out. All of the ways we're failing the youth and our children, this should not be one of them. This is not a hard one. This is not any kind of new fancy legislation. Lead pipes are bad. Get it out and stop giving it to the people that you're supposed to be protecting.
The EPA said $15 billion is the largest investment it has specifically for lead, but knows it's not enough.
Yeah, the agency says the Get the Lead Out initiative is just the first step. And if you're a homeowner and you're concerned about potentially having a lead pipe serving your home, contact your water system. To see a state-by-state breakdown of the estimated number of lead service lines, you can find an interactive map on InvestigateTV.com. Just search Lead Out.
To test or not to test? Still ahead, the medical mythbuster explains the pros and cons of a blood screening that could help detect a common cancer in men.
But first, using pain for a purpose.
They are not okay. We are not okay.
Children's lives forever changed by gun violence, and mothers refuse to stay silent. How they're determined to protect students in schools. You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime online. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel at Investigate TV. You can catch stories and full episodes. Schools should be considered one of the safest places for children.
But a nightmare scenario has unfolded on campuses across the country: school shootings. In 2023, there were at least 158 incidents of gunfire on U.S. school grounds. 45 people died and 106 more were injured.
This includes a shooting on March 27th at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee. A former student shot and killed 3 9-year-old students and 3 staff members. More than a year later, students who survived have returned to the classrooms, forced to live with the trauma. But a pair of moms have taken a stand, saying their families are not okay.
Reporter Amanda Harris spoke with them about advocating for gun safety.
Some photographs are worth 1,000 words, but this one will leave you speechless.
You were one of the only parents who was able to reunify with your child before the actual reunification at the nearby church.
As I was peering through the glass of the fire station, he caught eyes with me and he ran up to the window. And he screamed. He said, "Mom, come inside." He said, "Please, Mom." I said, "Put your hand right here." And so we held hands through that glass, and that's how we were reunited with one another.
Melissa Alexander's son survived the Covenant School shooting. So did Mary Joyce's daughter, Monroe.
She saw her face. She said she had an angry face, and she was screaming at them, and she stuck that gun in the window of their classroom and just started shooting. She's lost over 50% of her hearing on her left side. Her right side has declined as well, and it's because she was closest to the door. They are not okay. We are not okay.
Both families are learning what it really means to survive.
You're alive and you lived through that, but you're dealing with the heartache for the rest of your life and the trauma and the pain and the scars and the nightmares.
She doesn't sleep in her own bed still. For a while, she was running intruder drills in our house, sitting at the top of the stairs, staring out the window, and practicing where she would hide and how fast she would run in our house.
Mary and Melissa have added dogs to their homes. It brings comfort to their children. But for them, comfort is best found through action.
You're a longtime gun owner, conservative values, and now advocating for gun reform.
I think the two can coexist.
I don't want any one of you to feel what this feels like.
Both mothers spent the special session pushing for bills that would have required safe storage of guns, kept guns away from people with mental illness, and enhanced background checks. Not one of those bills were passed.
Some people might say this is an uphill battle. We live in a Republican-controlled state with a Republican-controlled legislature. How do you respond to that?
I think we're raising up a new kind of era of Tennesseans that are paying attention. I think we are giving space for conservative voices to speak up.
Mary and Melissa say what's best is to keep climbing the steps to the Capitol.
We can't go home to our children that survived a mass shooting, that lost their friends, and throw up our hands. I will not be able to live with myself if I don't use my voice, and we together are going to keep going. We aren't going anywhere.
At the beginning of 2024, Mary and Melissa said they fought hard to stop a bill that would allow teachers who met certain criteria to carry guns at school.
If you are saying, let's bring more guns into school, then you're going to have more shootouts and more gun battles, and you're going to traumatize groups of people even if they do survive. It's just a no-win situation.
But the measure passed, and in April, Tennessee's governor signed it into law. However, the decision whether or not to arm teachers lies with the individual school districts.
There are a multitude of states across the country who have similar types of legislation that allow this because they believe that it will make kids safer in schools. And that's what we want more than anything.
Nearly 30 states allow firearms to be carried on school grounds by people other than security officers. But each state has certain requirements as to whom can be armed.
Up next, doctors divided on whether men should get a certain blood test that can detect prostate cancer. The medical mythbuster clears up the confusion about who could benefit.
Our in-depth coverage continues. You can get connected to Investigate TV Plus on all social media platforms.
Prostate cancer is common in men in the U.S. Out of every 100 men, about 13 will get prostate cancer during their lifetime. And a blood test ordered by your primary care physician can help screen for it.
But there's conflicting advice about what's known as a PSA test. Recommendations for who should get screened have been in flux, and results are not always definitive.
In this medical mythbuster, reporter Viv Williams takes an in-depth look at why a PSA test is not perfect but could potentially save a life.
PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen. It's a protein made by the prostate gland that can be measured by a simple blood test called a PSA test.
Should I get a PSA test? Should I not get a PSA test? And I think that's at the heart of the confusion.
Doctors use the test to screen for prostate cancer because the disease can cause PSA levels to rise. Dr. Christopher Warlick, a urologist at the University of Minnesota, says other conditions that are not cancer can also make PSA numbers go up, including an enlarged prostate, which happens to men as they age, urinary retention, and inflammation. The Prostate Cancer Research website notes 3 out of 4 men with a raised PSA level will not have cancer.
Just because your PSA is elevated doesn't necessarily mean that you have cancer. And even if you do have cancer, it doesn't mean that it's one that's necessarily life-threatening.
Warlick says some prostate cancers are so slow growing that they may never cause any issues or require treatment. Plus, PSA tests sometimes result in false positives, which could lead to unnecessary biopsies or treatment. So, if a PSA test isn't perfect, why should men have it?
If you are harboring a prostate cancer that has the potential to be life-threatening, identifying it as early as possible through PSA testing is going to be your best opportunity to affect a cure.
The United States Preventative Services Task Force recommends men ages 55 to 69 who are not at increased risk of prostate cancer talk to their healthcare providers about whether or not to have PSA screening.
I do strongly advocate that people consider getting a PSA test in the right context, and this is really important.
Dr. Warlick says men who have a family history of prostate cancer, have had prostate cancer, or are of African American descent may be at increased risk of the disease and should have PSA tests.
We think that PSA testing helps us identify disease perhaps 6 to 10 years earlier in the natural history of the disease than we would have detected it otherwise.
What are normal PSA levels? Warlick says that depends on your age because levels raise as you get older. But generally, anything above 4 means there may be something going on, and depending on a man's risk factors and general health, further testing, such as an MRI or biopsy, may be warranted. So yes, PSA testing can be confusing, but
for some men it can be a lifesaver.
With this Medical Mythbuster, I'm Viv Williams.
From rehab exercises to rocking out, a band forms because of a shared struggle.
Still to come, how a physical therapist and former cancer patient found healing through music.
We turned it into a punk song because it was like cancer sucks.
You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime streaming online. Get the app for Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. They're free to download. Friendships can form when we least expect it and often start by finding common ground.
After sharing a passion for music, a physical therapist and patient in Omaha, Nebraska not only formed a bond, but a band.
Reporter Brian Mastry explains how their fight against cancer inspired powerful rock anthems.
We all have to start somewhere. For Shannon Seeley, the singing, the guitar playing, none of it comes naturally.
I didn't really even know what chords I was playing, or if they were even chords.
Like a lot of hobbies, the music filled in the unplayed notes of life.
Had just started moving my fingers around and it sounded good. So pull it.
A rock and roll lifestyle interrupted by the day job. Shannon Seeley's wheelhouse is more about building back things to what they once were.
Yep. Good, hold.
Not creating from scratch.
Okay, good. And relax.
As a physical therapist at Methodist, Shannon sees people who don't really want to see her.
I can take it. Most people don't like me.
This patient, Mike Morgan, struggled through 2 5-hour surgeries and radiation for his tonsil cancer.
I think I came up here and usually in a bad mood.
They seem unlikely candidates to exchange Christmas cards one day.
Yeah, it's understandable. I make you do stuff that you don't want to do, for sure.
Mike Morgan admits dark days swallowed his mind.
I wanted to be back to normal so fast, and this is just such a long, drawn-out process.
Right, frustration and...
Yeah, there was a lot of frustration.
Recovery felt unreachable.
The shoulders feeling okay?
Yeah.
All right, good.
At times, Mike Morgan couldn't speak, could not eat. Eventually, Mike Morgan saw his physical therapist as someone working with him.
So the doctor's job is to get these people to survive, but then it's like once they survive, it's like they need some sort of quality of life, and people don't realize that the side effects they're going to have from treatment.
So what turned adversaries into advocates, into friends?
We're very complimentary because I can't sing or write lyrics, and she could, but she couldn't really do the technical stuff.
For years, Mike Morgan wanted to be in a band, but he never had this type of partner.
Here we go.
On a Sunday morning, the duo, without a name, turned a formal dining room into a stage.
There's a song called When Your Kid Has Cancer that I wrote, and I literally wrote it like within an hour after we got the diagnosis that he had cancer. It was just, again, a way for me to vent.
In 2019, her son Taylor got the news.
He has been the inspiration for a lot of my songs, so he also battled cancer. He had Hodgkin's lymphoma.
She wrote lyrics, but never the notes. That's where Mike Morgan came in.
He was just like he had just recovered from it when I started, so it was really fresh in her mind.
He wrote half the song. So he wrote it from his perspective of what it's like to have cancer. So we kind of evolved that way. But yeah, it was a huge connection. I think that just made our connection even stronger.
We turned it into a punk sock because it was like cancer socks.
Shannon Seeley is now a grandmother, and Mike Morgan finally has a band.
It was just one of those odd connections in life that I would have never expected, to have cancer, but then go through it like I did, but then come out of it with something as positive as this music connection and friendship.
Shannon and Mike still get together weekly for practice. Maybe one day they'll come up with a name for the band.
At the end of 2023, they played together in front of their family and friends for the first time.
They even had a special guest join them, Shannon's son. I love how there's just music and brought them together, and it just shows you there's a connection for everyone to have with someone else. You just have to find it.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more of their songs.
Good stuff, right?
Yes.
All right.
Well, that's it for us on Investigate TV Plus. I'm T. Chappelle.
And I'm Lee Zurich. Thanks for watching.
On the next Investigate TV Plus, evictions rise nationwide, and so does the potential for violence.
At that moment of eviction, everyone is tense. It can escalate very quickly.
We take an in-depth look at how the right to a lawyer can help keep families in their homes and possibly save lives.